where the line blurs. Alexis Lane loved art and attending galleries since she was a teen. Now that she's a working adult, seldom does she have the time to enjoy the latest local exhibitions. Alexis, Lexi for short. She's an R&D analyst for a prestigious educational software and AI generative company. The firm Engine hit the market with its innovative platform for kindergarten through 6th grade. Academies clamored to get their licensing after the first release. By the third release, Engine, already a Fortune 500, secured a position in the top 50 worldwide rankings. The hire boom happened quickly. The need to up the staffing was the perfect opportunity for Lexi to land her job. She moved from the marketing team to R&D just as a fill-in until the original analyst returned from maternity leave. That was 3 years ago. Lexi is what you'd call a late bloomer in love, as accomplished as she was in academics, STEM. There was nothing left over after those blessed academics to fill her cup of awareness when love was the subject. Alexis found R&D interesting. She learned the ropes fairly quickly, and from there, she put her head down and poured her creative energy into her projects, group projects, and any tasks she was asked to fulfill. On this fall Wednesday evening, Lexi was one of the last staff still working. 4 days prior had been asked to pull together a technical report about Engine's latest STEM platform, Learning Creative. Though she was asked to pull together 12 months of reviews, she'd also gone above and beyond by providing recent STEM patents, the latest performance data from competitors and scenarios to consider for product improvement. Infographics and other visualizations were used to engage the senior staff. Honestly, Lexi was known for her in-depth reports regardless of the audience. Her philosophy was, if she had a niece or nephew at 10 years of age, they should be able to follow the breadcrumbs and have some idea of what the data means. The report was polished and probably one of Alexis' best pieces of work to date. Lexi stepped out of the elevator onto the 24th floor, where the top executive suites were located. She'd been granted authorization to get to this floor. Anyone coming to the last 2 levels of the building requires a special badge, and one was granted that day by Executive Secretary Choi. Alexis hadn't noticed the light spilling from under the director's door, Jeon Dae-Jun. She'd leave the package with 12 copies on Executive Choi's desk along with her badge. All had been sealed in an official office stationery envelopes. Before leaving the floor, Alexis visited the lavatory and then proceeded to the elevator. When she arrived, Director Jeon stood with one hand in his pocket and the other holding his cell. He appeared to be casually scrolling. Alexis' eyes didn't linger on him. She greeted him quietly and stood at a respectable distance. Director Jeon nodded, indicating he'd accepted her greeting, but he barely looked up from his phone to acknowledge her presence. She didn't expect much from him as he was the director. The severely handsome Director Jeon's persona had been the center of gossip periodically both in media and, because of the media attention, in the office around the proverbial water cooler from time to time. Director Jeon photographed with leggy goddesses from Europe to Asia. It seemed he'd never been photographed with the same woman more than twice. Some would consider him an international player. The parties he attended were always grand, and the alcohol was sure to be expensive. Any corner of the globe he'd been his reputation was quite the contrast to the alter ego we see in office. His leadership was impeccable, and he'd proven that he belonged at the top. One of Alexis's mantras was anything that was made to look easy definitely took a lot of hard work. That's the way things are for her, and that's an attribute she never questioned about him. Director Jeon Dae-Jun worked hard and played even harder. On some level, Alexis appreciated this quality. It meant that he cared enough about the company to protect it. Alexis smiled to herself. It was just a little smile as she affirmed her inner thoughts about the director. She felt protected. When the elevator doors opened, Director Jeon motioned to Alexis for her to step into the elevator before him. This was a total Western courtesy. In the East, hierarchy reigned. It is expected that senior staff or elders were permitted before someone of lower caste. The director's gesture caught Alexis off guard. With a slight bow, she hurried into the elevator again, leaving a wide berth for the director. He stepped in next and positioned himself back and to the left. He didn't lean against the elevator wall or railing, posture perfect. That was the extent of their interaction. As the elevator doors started to close, a hand reached in, and that motion retracted the doors. Maintenance repairman was an older guy. He'd been granted access to the floor to replace an old dinosaur huge copier complex. Alexis moved to the elevator's control panel to push the door's open button to allow for the gentleman and his slightly younger counterpart to wheel the monstrosity into the elevator. Once the copier rested between the doors, the elevator sensors sensed the obstruction, and the doors stayed open. Alexis had no choice but to step to the only available space that made sense, so she backed and to the left landing in front of Director Jeon. As they waited for the two workmen to get the copier into the elevator, Alexis pulled out her cell to reply to the latest text. Wifey. Girl, you are a mess. Smiley face emoji. Lexi. What's so wrong with that? Shoulder shrug emoji. Wifey. Sugar daddy? Lexi. OMG, no. Neutral face emoji. Never. Skull emoji. Lexi. I want my George Michaels. Red hearts emoji. Wifey. Not that again. Eyes emoji. You cannot base a relationship off of a song, Lex. Facepalm emoji. Lexi. Inverted smiling face emoji. How can I not? The lyrics are everything. That's what I want. Wifey. So, will you call him daddy? Rolling on the floor emoji. Lexi. For the right one. Smiley face emoji. Lexi. Daddy! Smiling face with eye. Here's emoji. Insert. Sparkles emoji. Insert. Eggplant emoji. Wifey. LOL emoji. Okay, daddy's girl, so all you gotta do is find your George Michaels. Lexi. I know. Lexi. You gotta help me. Wifey. You don't need me, Lex. Wifey. You need 10 DR. Wifey. Your profile pic 'cause your cutie with the title Virgin needs a teacher. Wifey. 6 months and a lot of patience. LMAO. It's a wrap. Wifey CYS. Lexi, B4N. Jeon Dae-Jun is usually not one for eavesdropping. However, while waiting for the repairman to navigate the copier into the elevator without scratching or denting the interior paneling, the constant dings of this woman's texts were getting on his nerves. It seemed that she was unaware of etiquette to turn the notification off when at work. Plus, she is standing so close. But I guess that cannot be helped, he thought. When Alexis held her phone to read her texts, he did as well. Dae-Jun's eyes widened slightly. The words leapt off the screen, hitting him in the face with a slight shock that such content could come from the librarian-looking woman standing in front of him. He'd read every word. Sugar daddy? She's into sugar daddies? Sugar babies. Is she a sugar baby? Not a sugar baby. What the hell is a sugar baby, he wondered. Note to self, must investigate. With each ding, Jeon Dae-Jun's education about Alexis's mental pathology piqued his interest more and more, and when he read the words Virgin needs a teacher, Jeon Dae-Jun wanted to know everything that there is to know about this woman. He'd already made up in his mind that he'd fire her, but before then, Jeon Dae-Jun would have a little fun. The four descended the floors in silence, except for the occasional buzz emoting from Jeon Dae-Jun's phone. Because the mechanical beast was a bear to navigate in and out of the elevator, the occupants silently agreed to traverse floors to allow the equipment drop-off first, and then the director, and finally Alexis, who needed to go back to the 16th floor to retrieve her things before heading out to meet Courtney for dinner. With the repairman gone, Alexis instinctively assumed the duty of pushing the floor buttons. What floor do you need, Sir? Alexis asked. 1, Jeon Dae-Jun replied. No, please. No thank yous were said. Alexis's hand instinctively found its target. Jeon Dae-Jun left the space without a word. His shoes echoed off the marble floors as he walked towards the revolving doors. The elevator whisked Alexis back to the 16th floor, where she sent her confirmation email to Executive Secretary Choi, along with a backup copy of the materials she'd left on her desk. 15 minutes later, Alexis emerged from the building. She walked with purpose, headed towards the subway. She stayed later than she anticipated, so the subway would be the fastest way to reach the restaurant. Courtney was waiting, and Alexis was excited to pick up where their text left off. What Alexis didn't know was that director Jeon Dae-Jun was waiting and watching. He'd started his surveillance that very night. With help of the driver, he'd follow Alexis to the subway, and then she disappeared out of sight. "Tomorrow is a new day," he whispered to himself. Courtney and Alexis met at their favorite sushi restaurant in Insadong. The 5 or so minute subway ride proved effective to make up for lost time. The bamboo aesthetic was sprinkled throughout the restaurant. The ladies grabbed their table for 2 at the last window, seating towards the rear of the establishment. Courtney Holiday was a plump, 5 feet 9 inches fiery redhead. She had a mischievous smile with a laugh to match. Her super short pixie cut always made her look like she was ready for a good time, and for the most part, she was. Courtney and Alexis were college dorm mates in freshman year, and the two have been inseparable ever since. Courtney and Alexis hugged quickly, all the while giggling as they exchanged pleasantries. "Hey, girl," said one. "Hey, ye," said the other. "Oh my God," Alexis chimed. "I cannot believe you said all that stuff in the text. Girl, you are too much." "Okay then," Courtney settling into her chair. "What should I have asked?" "Come on, you gotta admit, you've let time pass and now your ass is getting older. Lex, bae, it's almost embarrassing when you think about it. Still a virgin at your age. By now the waitress has brought waters to the table." "Shush," Alexis said in a panic. "Announce it to the entire restaurant, why don't you?" Alexis folded her arms across her chest. "Besides, what's wrong with waiting?" "Huh? What's so terrible about that?" Alexis protested. "There's nothing wrong with it, Lex, if you are doing it for the right reasons. But in my opinion..." Courtney's hand went up. "I think you are still pining away for Julian, that bum-ass." Courtney's voice heavy with annoyance. "Court," Alexis whined. "Don't be that way, it's not his fault. It's not anyone's fault but my own." Julian and Alexis dated for 4 months before Julian asked Alexis if they could step their relationship up to the next level. Alexis answered with the most honest response. "I don't know. I think," she stuttered while trying to pull together her thoughts. He'd asked her this several times since they started dating, and only recently had he become more intentional with his line of questioning. After Alexis's last attempt to explain her position, Julian had not so quietly stepped out of Alexis's love life. He hadn't been discreet when he was found parading Lexi's good friend and mutual confidant, Aubrey Morgan Gray. Unlike Courtney, Aubrey was a day-one long-term friendship, or so Lexi thought. Lexi and Aubrey go as far back as middle school 6th grade. From the moment Alexis laid her eyes on Julian, she was head over heels in love, at the very least infatuation. Julian and Alexis shared one class together that semester. He was charismatic and infectious in his energy. He seemed like a good time all the time. It didn't hurt that he was athletic, scholarly. He wasn't a stupid jock. He wasn't a bad person, Percy. He just wasn't a good person for Alexis. Julian liked Alexis. He was very attracted to her and could have seen himself in a long-term relationship. But his 23-year-old brain wanted what it wanted, and that was sex with Alexis. It would be a rainy fall early evening when Alexis' poli-sci class was canceled. She'd missed the online announcement and had traversed through the rain to arrive at a closed classroom, feeling defeated and soaking wet. Alexis reached out to Julian first, and when she didn't get a response from him, she reached out to Aubrey and Courtney via group chat to vent about the recent development, and asked if anyone wanted her to pick up something from the convenience store. Courtney asked for snacks, and Aubrey was radio silent. So, Alexis assumed Bree was attending an event or at the theater. So it was nothing short of a shock when Alexis arrived back at the apartment and was met with tennis shoes and boots strewn about the hallway leading into the living room. Alexis couldn't believe the mess of clothing on the floor and on the furniture. Usually, Aubrey and Courtney would give heads up if they were going to entertain company, and for sure they contained all of their business in their rooms. As Alexis stood in the living room surveying the area, and in deep thought about the 12 different scenarios that could have prompted such impulsiveness, an awareness started to seep into Alexis's consciousness. The belt looked familiar to her, as did the shirt and jacket and another thing. It was the thing that pulled Alexis's thoughts from the mess to the present. Cologne. She was keenly familiar with that smell. Where? Who? Alexis stood in wonderment, and then it clicked. Bleu de Chanel. The only person she'd ever smelled wearing that fragrance was Julian. It couldn't be him, she reasoned. Muffled sounds began emoting from the direction of Aubrey's room. Alexis's head snapped in the direction of the noise, and then back to the hallway and the living room, where she found herself standing near one of the novelty socks that were adorned with her face. She'd purchased them as a light-hearted Valentine gift for Julian way before they ever started dating. On the small Valentine stock card, she'd written, "Just know I'll always be at your feet. Happy Valley Friends Day. LOL Lexi." She'd thought her slogan was clever. Courtney told her it was a bad idea. Aubrey laughed and assured Alexi that Julian would see the humor. Aubrey assured Alexi that Julian understood Lexi's quirky sense of humor. A sinking, nauseating feeling settled in Alexis's stomach, and before she knew it, the door to Aubrey's room was flung open hard. So hard that the shelving nearest the impact site vibrated, but the two didn't register the noise as they were busy with their own chorus. Aubrey was perched atop of Julian, hitting strides like she'd trained for the Kentucky Derby. Julian's hands firmly clasped around Aubrey's waist, his eyes closed and mouth slightly agape. He looked like he was in Valhalla. However, instead of being the conqueror, he was in the process of being conquered. Alexis was in such disbelief, so much so that she didn't say a word. Her brain had misfired on all levels. One of her best friends and her cherished boyfriend. She couldn't make sense of what was happening. The words, why, how, why. It would be Aubrey that snapped Alexis back to reality. Alexis would never forget. Aubrey, atop Julian, and strident as ever, turned her head ever so slightly, not fully looking at Lexi, but there her profile was. Looking over her shoulder, she said, "Close the door, you are letting our pheromones out." And with that, Aubrey kicked her rhythm into high gear. She tossed her head back, face to the ceiling, and let out the most audible yes. And when she faced Julian, who by now had opened his eyes to his shock, saw his girlfriend standing there. Aubrey blocked his gaze with her body, took her hand, turned his head and attention back to Aubrey. With all of the authority vested in her by the powers of the state of Maryland. "You are mine!" Aubrey sang out like an old R&B song. And with that declaration, Julian acquiesced. His body's resolve gave way, and he shook like a 6.4 magnitude earthquake had hit the room, and more specifically, the bed he was in. Alexis tried to suppress that memory. She'd internalized what happened that day, and ultimately, she blamed herself for her lack of sexual flexibility. Through spoonfuls of chunky monkey ice cream and tears, Alexis confessed to Courtney as much. She was convinced that Aubrey, being the friend she was trying to stop Julian from cheating with some random just because of a little sex thing, and by helping Alexis with Julian, he'd never leave Alexis. He would remain faithful to her as a boyfriend by never leaving her. That way, there was no pressure on Alexis to do anything sexual until she was finally ready to be intimate with him. It was a win-win all around. Aubrey, knowing how love-struck Alexis was for Julian, took a gamble that Alexis would fall for that excuse. And to Aubrey's surprise, Alexis went along with that explanation. The fire was dispersed. Julian and Aubrey, re-robed, now sitting in the living room, both with their right hands to the Almighty, swearing allegiance to the flag of bullshit, that they'd always remain transparent and true allies to their friend and girlfriend Alexis. Julian even tried to break up with Alexis, but ultimately, he succumbed to her begging him to stay. She made him promise to only do those things with Aubrey, otherwise they are through. Alexis's reaffirmation that she'd forgiven him the moment she saw that he was ashamed of himself, even though he did nothing to remove Aubrey from the top of his mountain when he saw her standing there. She also made a stipulation that once he and Alexis were at third base, Aubrey was to be out of the picture, aside from the many nights of tears about the breach in sisterhood. Alexis fixated over the fact that she just bought the Bleu de Chanel for him for their 90-day anniversary. The gift was pricey for a college student, and it wasn't on sale, as the two sat enjoying their meal. Courtney was unconvinced that Alexis was serious about acquiring a temporary boyfriend. It just wasn't in Alexis's DNA to have a friend with benefits relationship. She was way too introverted and reserved for that. "So what do you think I should do?" Alexis chimed. "I am for real, Court. No more baby stuff for me," she said, slamming her fist to the table. "I am already taking classes." That got Courtney's attention. "Classes again? For what this time?" Courtney leaned back. "No more math classes. You are not going to find the man you desire in pre-calc, babe." "Nope, not that." Alexis leaned in. "Dominatrix classes." She smiled a wide, toothy smile and leaned back slowly in her chair. "What? No way, no way." Courtney was at full attention. Oh, and I am taking sensuality classes too." By this point, Alexis was swirling the remnants of salad leaves around the glass dish that contained bits of dressing with her chopstick. "I found these really cool classes. Court and the women that run them were super chill and super nice, and we have a trial class, free of charge to see if we like their teachings. And—" Courtney interrupted. We what? "We take the classes to see if it's a fit. And if it is," Alexis said, sounding like a used car salesman, "if it is, we have a 6-week session for each, and the great part is they both start this Saturday." Courtney could not believe what she was hearing. Saturday. That's 2 days away, Lexi. What the hell? Alexis arrived in office early as usual. She'd toned it down from 45 minutes to 20 minutes early. She loved coming in when the office was empty, though 20 minutes was a little too late. The office started coming to life around that time. She wasn't alone long enough to sort through her thoughts or to get her daily coffee or tea prepared. She'd gotten into the habit of alternating between the two beverages regularly. On this day, she'd worn a taupe-ribbed knit sweater dress and cute boots that met her at the ankle, and a floor-length camel-colored cardigan. Her hair was 85% always either pulled up or back in a severe bun. She toyed with a few ringlets to frame her face. At work, Alexis wanted to exemplify business, though she thought the ringlets gave an air of playfulness. So the librarian look was definitely in full effect. Courtney had assigned Alexis homework before dinner ended last night. Sign up with as many dating sites as possible and not just 10DR. And so she did, right before bed with one eye barely open. Alexis had signed 11 sites. 5 of those were for gay men, but she'd only focused on the name like Jacked, Scruff, Grindr, and Mr. X. She'd uploaded an ambiguous headshot and popped in a snazzy profile obituary because that's how she felt about those things. She kept it simple. Mrs. Wright looking for her father. Figure to hold her hand while she learns the ropes. You must be a patient, kind, and willing to teach. If you can do that with this virgin, then I am willing to call you Daddy. Having felt accomplished and excited, Alexis drifted off to Neverland. Alexis was awakened to 58 new notifications. She was so happy to see that number blaring back at her. She would check later today when she had a break. Upon opening her email, she saw a 9 a.m. R&D meeting in the Pluto conference room. It was the smallest room, hence the name Pluto. The director will be in attendance. Please be on time. Regards, Executive Secretary Choi. The meeting sounded important. Alexis couldn't wait to attend. Maybe R&D was getting a new assignment. Jeon Dae-Jun was crafty. He drafted a fake meeting just to get Alexis in the room with him. He needed to have a reason to assign her to his pilot work group. He wanted to know as much about her in a relatively short period, and therefore, unbeknownst to Alexis, she already held a position to this three-person operation. The pitch to R&D was paced and deliberately heavy. Jin had been approached the board to see if their STEM platform could integrate into the dating platform. All details of Project Connect would come from the director himself, and unbeknownst to Executive Secretary Choi, she'd help move this experiment between Jeon Dae-Jun and Alexis along. As the R&D staff made their way into the cozy conference room space, seating at the table had vanished in a blink. Only chairs that lined the room's interior wall were available. The chair, closest to the director but further from the table, was available, and Alexis took it. Director Jeon Dae-Jun's intent was to have Alexis nearest him at all times, but this arrangement threw a wrench in his plans for today's meeting. To remedy that, he insisted that everyone be at the table so the attendees made room, and so did he, by subtly ushering Alexis' chair to sit practically arm and arm with him. He's the director. No one ever sits that close to senior management, let alone the director. Jeon Dae-Jun started the meeting. Engine often receives petitions from various industries to partner with their platforms to create said application. As it happens, that luck landed in his lap. A small Maryland company pitched their request to have Engine help them with their dating app that would be geared towards syncing college students with one another. Jeon Dae-Jun laid out the scenario. Small team of 3. He didn't want to pull too many resources from the R&D department. This team would work with the client's team to become familiar with their needs. Check current social and market trends. And a select few would set up a test profile to see how well the platforms work with one another. Jeon Dae-Jun went on to say that there could be long hours in the beginning, but that he didn't anticipate the grueling work schedule to last longer than 6 weeks. By then, we should be ready for the first round of testing and something to present to the client thereafter. I would like volunteers for this, or I can have Secretary Choi pull names. It's your call. Jeon Dae-Jun went on to say, I know some of you are more recently out of college, so you might have a better perspective on dating culture. I will give everyone a moment to think about this proposal and to ask questions. Having ended his announcement, the director turned to Secretary Choi to engage with her. This gesture was also part of his plan. What he learned about Gen Zs is they are always tethered to their phones. He expected that Alexis would have her phone in hand, and it would be highly possible that she'd place it on the table at some point during the meeting. What he couldn't predict with certainty is if she'd leave the phone face up or down. The idea to disarm the room by leaving time for them to talk amongst themselves would surely do the trick. He was right. Alexis, seated practically at the head of the table, had no choice but to turn away from Jeon Dae-Jun to face her teammates to engage with them. She'd placed her phone down face up. With her focus on strategizing with the rest of the room, her phone continued to light up with silent notifications. The red numbers had gone up from 58 to 94, 106, and so on. And then came the text from Wifey. Jeon Dae-Jun, who pretended to be focused on scribbling notes on his iPad, raised an eyebrow at the name of texter. Wifey? Jeon Dae-Jun tapped his icon on the surface of his iPad. He wrote 2 letters by, still maintaining the facade of jotting down ideas or whatever his team would assume him to be doing. Wifey, SIMYC, smiley face emoji. Wifey, late night. Wifey, let me check your profile. Wifey, girl WTH. Wifey, laugh out loud crying emoji repeated. Wifey, BAETMYDN, create a profile on surprise face emoji. Wifey, Grinder and Mr. X. Laugh out loud crying emoji repeated. Ghost emoji. Wifey, Urbio, neutral face emoji. TMO. Wifey, IMSO, skull emoji, right now. Wifey. CMWYC. Wifey, YKILYR, ha 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 ha. Smiling face with eye hears emoji. Wifey, facepalm emoji, SMH, purple hearts. The messages ended almost as quickly as they began, with them rolled up and the latest message the only one visible before the phone's screen went black. Jeon Dae-Jun would have to up his strategy to get more information. This time, it would come directly from Alexis. Secretary Choi commanded the room to settle down and refocus on director Jeon Dae-Jun. The group agreed that they'd submit their interest in the project to Secretary Choi as soon as the meeting was over. Secretary Choi reiterated that volunteers should have their nomination in no later than 10:30 a.m. That gave everyone 30 minutes to decide if they wanted to participate. The applicant pool extended beyond the 3-person team needed. Secretary Choi let the room know that final decisions will come out later that day. She thanked the room on behalf of the director, and everyone was released from the meeting. As Alexis was moving her chair back to its original position against the wall, Jeon Dae-Jun casually mentioned that he hoped she applied as well, even though she's still considered fresh graduate when compared to, say, himself or her other department peers. Alexis appreciated the brief pep talk. She gave a light smile and bowed slightly out of respect. As she was leaving, she paused and turned to Jeon Dae-Jun. "Have a good day, sir," she said cheerfully as she left the room. Alexis hadn't let on one way or the other if she'd consider volunteering for the project. But Jeon Dae-Jun already knew the outcome for her, so it really didn't matter. It was 2:30 p.m. when Secretary Choi sent the final results to the R&D team. Han Ji-ah, Park Ha-jun, and Alexis Lane. Please report to Director Jeon Dae-Jun's office at 4:30 p.m. today for further instruction. Thank you to everyone who submitted their name. Alexis was stunned to see her name on the short list. She knew she hadn't submitted her name. She'd gotten distracted and had forgotten to press send on her email. A thought occurred that someone must have nominated her. She stared at the email for several more minutes and then went about her regular duties. Alexis arrived 4 minutes early and stood outside of the director's suite nearest the entrance. Secretary Choi acknowledged my arrival and ushered me into the office where there were several couches, a table positioned between the two, and at the director's desk, 2 freestanding chairs. Director Jeon Dae-Jun gave an approving nod to Secretary Choi, and I found my seating at the farthest end of the couch nearest the door. It wasn't that I didn't feel comfortable working at Engine, but being one of a handful of foreign employees and the only black person, I tried to minimize my presence, as if that was actually possible. I didn't like to stand out unnecessarily. I never knew if my presence made others uncomfortable. I was always pleasant to be around, not loud or brash, and certainly not emotional. If there were last-minute work requests or anything outside of the ordinary, you could guarantee to hear rumblings from either seasoned staff or the younger staff, the ones just getting used to adulting. My Korean was fairly flawless. I even inadvertently picked up a Gyeongsang accent from my language tutor. From time to time, people would ask if I was raised in or around the South Gyeongsang province. I found it flattering. Some people say the accent is less sophisticated sounding compared to the Seoul dialect, but I never let that make me feel embarrassed. What would be more embarrassing is if I couldn't communicate with my neighbors after having lived here for several years. Han Ji-ah was a 5'6" waif, late 20-something. She had a pleasant demeanor and a kind face to match. Like Alexis, Han Ji-ah was razor-focused when she worked and often completed her projects on time. Park Ha-jun was the newest R&D team member. He was fresh out of military service and had been employed with Engine for 9 months. He was a nice addition to the team and ridiculously handsome. His smile is absolutely infectious, and his voice, gah! I could listen to him talk all day. For Alexis, the team was solid. The 3 sat in silence. Jeon Dae-Jun panned the faces staring back at him. He used the silence to gather his mental notes, and then he recommended to the team to use their iPads to take notes. At the end of the meeting, Director Jeon asked if any had scheduling considerations that he should be aware. Each person had obligations. They shared their availability one another. Jeon Dae-Jun didn't really care about anyone's schedule other than Alexis's. He saw that she had 4 hours of blocked time on Friday and Saturday nights, 2 hours per day. He was very curious about this obligation. Thank you for forwarding your schedules. I recognize that some of you provided blocked time off for the weekends. The weekends are your personal time. I don't want you to think that you are obligated to report that to me other if you absolutely needed to communicate with your team members or me. Jeon Dae-Jun tried to appear genuine. He tried not to rush the situation, and as luck would have it, the mini-group's first official meeting had 2 last-minute cancellations. That was a bummer for Alexis because she'd become more invested in the project as she learned more about the dating market and what's happening on college campuses. She'd pulled together her findings, but without an audience, she was going to forward her project notes to the group and wait for feedback when Director Jeon Dae-Jun appeared at her desk. Ms. Lane, it seems Han and Park are unable to meet this evening. Are you comfortable with meeting with me to review your project findings? Alexis looked at Director Jeon. He'd startled her. She was in the middle of finalizing her first official draft of findings that she didn't hear him approach her desk. When Alexis looked up at Jeon Dae-Jun, she couldn't help but notice how incredibly handsome he is. He had a swimmer's physique, broad-shouldered, long and lean torso. She briefly imagined what his abs would look like. She shook her head no while trying to erase her wondering thoughts about the director's body type. Instantly, she felt ashamed. No, you cannot meet tonight, Ms. Lane? There was a little disappointment in his voice. Oh, no, sir. Yes, I am available to meet whenever you are. Alexis affirmed. Okay, Jeon Dae-Jun said. He gave a nod to confirm the meeting will go on and slight smile, and just like that he was gone. Several minutes later, an email from Secretary Choi. This email confirms the Ms. Lane will meet with Director Jeon at 6:30 p.m. to review Ms. Lane's project notes. The meeting will take place in the director's office. Light refreshments will be available. Best, Secretary Choi. Alexis was happy that she wouldn't starve late into the evening. She was highly optimistic that their meeting wouldn't last longer than 1.5 hours. After wrapping up her notes, creating 2 printed copies and saving a version in a shared file server, she had an hour before her meeting, so she used her time to log into several of sites she'd enrolled. The amount of inquiries she received daily was overwhelming her. She didn't have time to review them all, and it seemed that she had even less time to make up her mind if she wanted to respond. Alexis had a hard time understanding a lot of the messages. Some kept asking if she was a woman, how long she'd transitioned. Others asked if she'd ever seen a real man's unit. She didn't quite understand why the messages were hypersexualized. Are you French? Because Eiffel for you. Or, I bet your clothes would look great on my floor. Others straight out asked if she was CIS female. She received compliments about her beauty, but by far it was the profile bio that most of the comments were focused. All wanted to be the first to take her virginity. She wasn't sure if any wanted to actually be the candidate she desired. She'd enlist Courtney for help. By 6:30 p.m., Alexis had knocked softly on the director's door. Director Jeon, she called out. It's Alexis. Come in. Alexis entered the room and found the room equipped with an additional tablet. Copies of her report laid neatly on the table between both couches, and to the left was a mini-bar stocked with miniature bottles of water and organic juices. The smell of freshly baked cheese and herb flatbread, accompanied by a salad of some kind, filled the room. Alexis paused to admire the spread, but tried not to linger. She didn't want to seem eager to eat. In fact, she hadn't noticed that she was hungry until she entered the room. Please help yourself, Jeon Dae-Jun said. Alexis ignored the entrees and opted for juice and water. She grabbed both and then waited for the invitation to be seated. Jeon Dae-Jun sat and listened to all Alexis had to say. Her numbers and statistics were credible and relevant. For longer than he planned, Alexis pitched her ideas, pros and cons. She walked through her schematic with so much intensity for the project that Jeon Dae-Jun hadn't noticed an hour had already passed. Lost in the preliminary report, she'd managed to sincerely pique his interest, and Dae-Jun found himself excited to hear from the other two project staff as well. If not for the notification ding on Alexis's phone, the pair would still be in discussions. Jeon Dae-Jun paused, allowing Alexis to check her phone. He'd proposed a small break, and Alexis, aware that the meeting was almost finished, decided to use the opportunity to connect with Courtney to confirm if they were still on for tonight. She got up to walk towards the snack area. Hey, yeah, we're still working. No, I don't think so. I'll let you know. A pause. As soon as I can. She giggles. Yes, so many D pics. She giggled again. Is that how I'm supposed to base my decision? Geez. She pauses. I promise. She pauses. I won't make a decision without you, Alexis whispered. She laughed again. Bye. Jeon Dae-Jun tried his best to overhear her conversation. He figured now was the time to make his first move. Alexis, this is some great work. Thank you for your time and dedication to the project. I cannot wait to see what this team pulls together for the potential client. He gave a slight smile. Not too much. He knew how to be charming with women and figured he could disarm Alexis in no time. But he was wrong. When she interacted with him, it was all business. Zero after-hours banter. Another notification pinged on Alexis's phone. Instinctively, she picked up the phone for a quick glance and then sat it back down, this time face down on the table. Sorry, sir, for the interruption. It's okay, it's late, and I am sure your fiancé is waiting for you. Alexis's head snapped at attention. Fiancé? No, sir. She smiled to herself. No fiancé. She sat biting her bottom lip. Oh, okay, your boyfriend. I shouldn't assume. Excuse me for my ignorance. Your partner must surely miss you. You've received a lot of attention this evening. Again, with the polite and disarming smile. Just a friend, Alexis offered. Jeon Dae-Jun's patience was wearing thin. He was used to women falling at his feet to be in his presence. Alexis's indifference towards him annoyed him. His immediate thought was that there was something seriously wrong with her. After all, he's crazy rich, educated, and easy on the eyes. He's a man with connections, and that's just on any given Tuesday. Jeon Dae-Jun smirked to himself at his own thoughts about himself. Honestly, if he could date himself, he would. Again. Alexis's not picking up on social cues meant Jeon Dae-Jun was forced to put himself out there more and in a way that would entice Alexis. And just as Jeon Dae-Jun was about to strike up more small talk, another ping happened. Alexis picked up the phone to turn off notifications, and it would be the next poor soul's D pic that she commented, "Oh geez, is it supposed to be sideways?" Alexis exclaimed. She had a panicked expression. Jeon Dae-Jun didn't miss her reaction and used this fated opportunity to ask if everything was okay. Sure, I guess. She paused. Her brows were knitted. It was the first time Jeon Dae-Jun saw Alexis unnerved. Not that he's ever given her any thought before this passion project. As a matter of fact, he really couldn't recall the number of times he'd spoken directly to her outside of work. He reminded himself again to tread lightly. If there is something bothering you, Ms. Lane, it is possible that I can help. Jeon Dae-Jun placed his water on the table. He leaned forward slightly, just enough to show that he'd given his full attention to her. And he clasped his hands, interlacing his fingers to show that nothing else was important. Alexis saw his posturing as an honest invitation. The two sat in silence for mere seconds. For Jeon Dae-Jun's ear felt like an eternity. Women are so gullible, he thought to himself. And just as he was about to reassure Alexis that his office was a safe space, Alexis began to unburden her heart. Director Jeon, She stumbled with her words. I don't know if this is appropriate to speak with you about. It is personal. I don't want you to judge me. She looked away from his gaze. I don't want you to think little of me, she said, still looking away. Her phone pinged again. It wasn't wifey. It was another notification from one of the 11 sites. Alexis realized that she was feeling overwhelmed by it all. Alexis shared everything except what her true intentions had been for signing up on all of those dating sites. Jeon Dae-Jun knew this as well, but he couldn't let on. He had to wait for her to tell him this crucial piece of the puzzle. It is only then that he could insert himself into her plans. Alexis, looking slightly less burdened after having confessed what she'd experienced so far. Alexis was extremely appreciative that the director was so open and willing to listen. As she laid bare the last 2 weeks of her dating journey, she was a little embarrassed. She tried to look him in the eye but failed several times. Gosh, he's so handsome! Her heartbeat increased enough for her to recognize that her adrenaline was rising. Alexis was aware that she was talking way too fast. Her story was all over the place. Bottom line, she was nervous around him because she found him attractive. Her cheeks burned a little. She could feel the heat in her face. With her brown skin, surely he wouldn't notice. As a matter of fact, Alexis knew she was a non-existent fish in his pond. He would never be attracted to a person like her, plain and goofy, a little nerdy compared to her friends who were very cool, always on trend, and some were really polished. As usual, she was invisible to the opposite sex, but this time it was okay because he is the director. Another ping. Jeon Dae-Jun and Alexis looked at her phone. She exhaled and picked it up. The last picture she viewed was still active on her page. For whatever reason, it annoyed her terribly. Before she could really think about her next interaction with the director, Alexis's hand shot up. See this, she said in an elevated tone. What the heck is these? It wasn't a question. Alexis handed her phone to Jeon Dae-Jun. Exasperated, she didn't think twice as he took the phone that she practically hoisted into his hands. Why send this to me? And dude, what the hell is wrong with your shy? She caught herself before she cursed. Stuff. Your junk. You know. It's practically pointing left, like it's trying to hail a taxi. Jeon Dae-Jun looked at the phone. His eyebrows knitted at the spectacle and then up at Alexis. Her comments caught him completely off guard, so much so that he couldn't help but laugh. Not a gut-wrenching laugh, but a laugh nonetheless. As a matter of fact, they both laughed. Alexis just shook her head. I am thinking about giving up. It's all too much. I really don't think I am cut out for this, sir. Alexis looked deeply into his eyes. It was like she was looking for her savior. Her face showed defeat before her plan got off the ground. Her innocence had shone through, and Jeon Dae-Jun's heart hitched. It skipped a beat, which caused him to cough a little. Startling Alexis, she offered him his water bottle, asked if he was okay. When Jeon Dae-Jun nodded, yes. Ping. Another notice. Alexis practically held her breath. Jeon Dae-Jun, still holding her phone, looked at the phone screen. This time the word wifey shone on the screen. Wifey, he said, barely audible. Alexis's shoulders relaxed. I am sorry, sir. I should go. I have held you well past time. Alexis started gathering her things. Not quickly, but she was in motion. Her thoughts had drifted. She was going to tell Courtney that she was abandoning their project. Maybe next year. Next year she would try again, Alexis noted to herself. Jeon Dae-Jun, sensing his opportunity, slipping away for good. Ms. Lane. Is it okay for me to ask? Why did you sign up for the dating apps? I get 1 or 2, but why so many? Jeon Dae-Jun needed her to tell him now. Today. Before she called the project off completely. Alexis stood straight, shoulders squared. Her eyes met his, and this time she held his gaze. I really should leave, Director Jeon. I don't want to burden you with my silliness. You've been an amazing listener. A smile crept across her face. It was warm and genuine. They stood that way, staring at one another. Not awkward, just in admiration or something Jeon Dae-Jun couldn't identify. Ping. Wifey. Damn. Power doesn't announce itself. Desire doesn't ask permission. And innocence doesn't always protect the one holding it. So let's talk about it. Because not everyone will agree on what's wrong here. Here's what I want to know. 1. Is Director Jeon a predator or just a man responding to chemistry? 2. Did Alexis cross a professional line first, or did he quietly push her there? 3. If Alexis were less innocent, would people still call what Director Jeon is doing wrong? 4. If desire is mutual, does power still make it wrong? If Where the Line Blurs pulled you in, go ahead, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Because temptation doesn't stop here.